Welcome back to the Cartoon History Channel, and this is Saturday Afternoon Retro Tune 11, the history of Nicktoons. Lisa Coffey was the key talent search for the original three Nicktoons. The three Nicktoons that she approved was Jim Jenkins's Doug, and Arlene Kolaski and Gabor Chupo's from the Kolaski Chupo Company, Rugrats, and Johnny K's The Ren and Stimpy from his Spumco Company. These were the three cartoons that went on to eventually spawn a cartoon revolution for the network. The next cartoon after the first three of Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy was Joe Murray's Rocko's Modern Life that lasted from 1993 to 1996. The next cartoon was another one from Kolaski Chupo, All Around Monsters. And then later in the 90s, we had SpongeBob and Rocket Power, Cat Dog, The Wild Thornberrys, and SpongeBob, and Hey Arnold, which lasted in production from 1996 to 2001. But if it weren't for those first three cartoons, there wouldn't have been any of that. Those first three creative minds are what drove the franchise of Nicktoons to begin with. Rugrats was a group of four toddlers: Tommy, Chucky, Phil, and Lil. Fraternal twins Phil and Lil DeVille. Chucky, the local nervous, scared, nerd-like character, nerding geek, and the main leader, Tommy Pickles, who was the cousin to the antagonist, Angelica Pickles. His very first episode was August 11th, 1991, Tommy's first birthday, where he comes out as the leader from episode 1. They all want to try some dog food, and they finally try it at the end of the episode, and then they start acting like dogs, because they get it in their little child minds that if they eat dogs food, then maybe they'll turn into dogs. The first show, Rugrats, lasted from 1991 to 2004, but not consecutively. It only had 9 seasons. It lasted from 1993 from 1991 to 1994, and then from 94 to 2004. But when they brought the show back in 94, there was only 2 episodes that were actually made within that year that aired. And the next season, season 4, didn't actually completely air until 95. It was the 2 Jewish themed episodes, the Hanukkah and the Passover episode. The first cartoon, Doug, the first cartoon that inspired the Hey Arnold concept was Jim Jenkins' Doug. The pilot of the show was actually Doug Bags and Nematode, story-wise, but the pilot of the show, as far as the look of the pilot, was Doug Can't Dance. It aired out of order, and it aired in chronological order for the story, Doug Bags and Nematode, but the pilot episode was actually Doug Can't Dance, where he dresses up as this blue slug for this school costume dance thing. He gets the idea that he can't dance from the school bully, Roger Klotz. And in the very first episode, Doug Bags and Nematode, he's the new kid in town, and he gets tricked by the local bullies to bag a nematode because that's the new thing to do for the new kid. And he kind of becomes the town pick on and nerd, if you will, that people pick on throughout the show. He gets a love interest from the start, Patty Mayonnaise, and a best friend, along with his dog, that's already his best friend, Mosquito Valentine, called Skeeter Valentine. The last show that Vanessa picked up was a parody of 50s and 60s style cartoons called Ren and Stimpy. A dumb witted cat named Stimpy and a Chihuahua dog that is their partners and they live together. One is the boss and one is the hothead, Ren, and Stimpy is um, the softer, the comedy fool, if you will. Ren's the straight man, and Stimpy is the fool. He's a dummy, basically. The very first pilot aired a year before in 1990 as a theatrical short, Ren and Stimpy in the Big House. Johnny K's show Ren and Stimpy was known for its gross out humor and edgy humor. The reason he left the show and got fired from the show was this episode called that introduces this character George Liquor. Ren beats the snot out of this character because the guy was obviously a parody of an alcoholic, and he tries to train them how to act like a proper guard animals, and Ren snaps and beats him up. The next show was Rock Was My Life, created by Joe Murray. It was about an average guy that was an immigrant from Australia, moves to this American town called O-Town that is owned and incorporated everything in the town by this conglomerate mega corporation called Conglomero. He breaks to this comic book store called Super A Lot of Comics and he gets fired. And then he works at this local mom and pop one called Kind of A Lot of Comics. You also notice in the show that everything has the word O in it. The conglomerate company runs the whole town like a utopia, but in a bad way. The main antagonist is his next door neighbor, Ed Bighead. His partner that helps him out with that kind of Ed Bighead stuff is Bev Bighead, the antagonist's wife. His two friends that help him out throughout the series with his zany antics are Heifer Wolf and Filbert Turtle. 20-something loafers that don't do anything. Filbert makes his money by recycling cans and making money off of that, but he didn't have a physical job. Heifer Wolf is a loafer nobody that lives with his parents. But they're extra comedy relief for the show. The Ralph Bighead character that is based off the creator is also voiced by the creator, Ralph and/or Rachel Bighead. He creates this cartoon based on his parents that's Rocco and Heifer and Filbert's favorite show, Meet the Fatheads. This show also had a little bit of what you would call edgier humor, similar to Ren and Stimpy, but it wasn't as bad. Like, for instance, there was a time that they were playing a game, and it was a board game, but it was a game called, well, just look it up. I'm not going to say what it was. And the show dealt with very taboo topics. And Old Froggy Frog is talking about having a midlife crisis. In Leapfrog, it's talking about a story where Bev comes on to Rocco. And in the big question and the big answer, it's an allegory for, because it says in the story that cats and turtles don't mix. It's an allegory for mixed race marriage. In The Closeted Clown, that's an allegory for someone being LGBTQ and all that. Except they're using the clown is the relation to what they're talking about. These first 5 cartoons were made by their production companies, but they were also made by Games Animation. That was the name of Nickelodeon Animation Studios before it got its name in 1998. And the next cartoon, Klasky Chupo, that I'm going to talk about is Aura Monsters, the 5th one. Like the second Klasky Chupo cartoon was Aura Monsters. They were monsters, but they were in high school. And the ultimate goal to get your high school monster diploma was they were monsters, but it was told down to where kids would understand it. Their goal was how to be the ultimate scarer. Similar, like on Tiny Toons, is getting their university degree to be the ultimate cartoon. These 3, Ickis, Oblina, and Crumb, their ultimate goal is to be the most scaring thing that they can be, and that's how they get their diploma. Their school is based in a deep down beyond a washer and dryer that's at the dump. It's deep beneath the surface of this. That's what you see when you go to the junkyard where their school is. And that's where they go to the surface world to scare people through that dryer. These were the first 5. Now the 6th cartoon, that was Hey Arnold, from 1996 to 2001 in production. But it lasted from 1996 to 2004. But it had 5 seasons, so it was in production from 1996 to 01. And it was basically a show about how being a kid is from their perspective in the city of Hillwood. Arnold had this football or arch-shaped head, and his nickname was Football Head. He lived with his grandparents that were the parents of his dad, Miles Shortman, and his wife that's also Arnold's mom, Stella. He was their son, and Phil and Gertie was her in-laws. He basically lives in what would want to call the project type area, except because he's the grandson, he has the penthouse suite of this boarding house called the Sunset Arms. And everybody else from other different cultures lived there. This Vietnamese guy called Mr. Nguyen, this dwarfism person that's a construction worker, this foreign guy that's a con artist, Oscar Kokoschka, and they all, at least in Honor's perspective, they all live together in harmony. But that's what he wants people to think. In real life, the characters don't get along. The bulk of them do, but everybody hates Oscar. And his grandfather, gets fed up with how everybody's always fighting with one another. But that's just the main family point. There's also why you'll learn if you watch Helga on the Couch why Helga is the bully. She comes from a bad home life, and she's the main antagonist of the show. She's got a dad that just cares about the older sister, and a mother that's clearly an alcoholic, and a dad that's also way into his Big Bob Pataki Beeper Emporium, doesn't spend any time with his younger daughter Helga. And you find out also in Helga on the Couch that she flashes back to when she was in preschool. She had to take herself to school, and the reason she developed feelings for Arnold is he was the only one that was nice to her. And she starts being a bully because she reaches her breaking point and uses the bullying thing as a way to protect about her true feelings. In the early 2000s and 2002, they had what was going to be Arnold Shapes the Neighborhood, but Paramount and Nickelodeon wanted Craig to make that into Harold the movie. That flops. And the movie he was going to do, Hound of the Jungle movie, that premiered in 2017, 7 years ago. But they made him make the journal episode that led into the movie that didn't happen until 2017. Because of that, after the show wrapped, he left the network. Didn't return until the late 2010s, and that's why we didn't get the Jungle movie until 2017. The next two cartoons I'm going to talk about are both from 1998 to 2004. Cat Dog and The Wild Thornberrys. The Cat Dog show was created by Peter Haney, and it was a fraternal conjoined twin that was half cat and half dog. The cat half was named Cat, and the dog half was named Dog. One was a smart, bookish, nerd type, if you will, into culture and opera and smart, and one was a bit of a dumb, dim-witted half that loved life and loved fun type things like monster trucks, roller coasters, fairs. He loved his life and he was going to live it. They were kind of a yin and yang in a cartoon world. It lasted for 4 seasons, and they had their differences, but they really loved each other. The third Klasky Chupo cartoon was The Wild Thornberrys, and it was about a 12-year-old girl with red hair and braces that saves this warthog that's actually a shaman, and he gives her the gift of gab, a split speaking ability from people to animals. Her best friend is this chimpanzee named Darwin. She goes across the world with her family on this Steve Irwin type show called Nigel Thornberry's Animal World. And he hosts the show, and her mom shoots it. One lasted 5 seasons instead of 4 seasons. Second to last, 90s Nicktoon aired on May 1st, 1999 to present, and was created by one of the creative development people on the directors for the cartoons on Rocko's Modern Life, Steven Hillenburg. He took a bulk of that crew, Derek Dryman, Tom Kenny, Mr. Lawrence, and such, and made SpongeBob. In the main concept of the show SpongeBob, you've got two Dennis the Menace characters living right in the middle of a Mr. Wilson character. The two Dennis the Menace characters are Patrick and SpongeBob. Patrick lives on the left, SpongeBob lives on the right. And the Mr. Wilson character, Squidward, lives right in the middle. The humor comes from the stupidity of the characters. He's been working at the Krusty Krab for 25 years with his Mr. Wilson neighbor, Mr. Squidward Tentacles. And he loves it, but Squidward hates it. The bane of the existence of the town is Sheldon J. Plankton, owner of the chum bucket across the street from SpongeBob's pride and joy, the Krusty Krab. The smartest person in the town, next to Sheldon Plankton, is Sandy Cheeks, his best friend. Last cartoon of the 90s on this list, because I'm talking about 90s Nicktoons, was Rocket Power from 1999 to 2004, August of 1999 to be precise, to 2004. And it was about a family of three, Ray Rocket, Otto Rocket, Reggie Rocket, that are very, very competitive, brother and sister, with a very strict but lovable dad named Ray Rocket that runs a business with his friend Tito called the Shore Shack. That's half of it's a surf shop and half of it's a restaurant. And they have their friend Twister Rodriguez and their other friend Sam Dullard that goes by the nickname Squid. But they ultimately learn by the end of the show that family is more important than competition. Join me next Saturday afternoon Retro Tune for Saturday afternoon Retro Tune 12, when I'm going to be talking about the 2000s Nicktoons and their history.